a video behind the computer here. His name's Venerable Vipassy. He's 20. He's 21 years old. I'm 73. So we have a different experience, physical, perceptual. Our histories are different. Our memories are different. His body's obviously younger than I. But the question is his awareness any different from mine? So like, does awareness get old? Or does awareness know oldness? I would suggest the former. I don't think, I mean, we can't compare our awarenesses because awareness is not an object that you compare like apples and peaches or something like that. But I would suggest that awareness doesn't get old. That's why we can say to ourselves, yeah, I feel old, but yet I don't. And that awareness is where we find our refuge. And what I keep suggesting in meditation, it's hard to get the language around it, but the way I like to talk about it, I like to talk about awareness with the way things are, rather than just concentrating on the way things are. And when it's just language, but when I say awareness with the way things are, then it doesn't really matter how the way things are. Now, on a physical level, sure, it matters if I get sick, or on a social level, if something amiss is happening in the monastery, yes, it matters on that level. But in meditation, we're not so much concerned on the functional, social level. That's another part of our life. In the meditative part of our life, and they're not mutually exclusive, but what we're trying to train ourselves to do is just to be aware with the way with the way things are. Awareness with aging. Whereas with Vipassy, Venerable Vipassy, he's also aging, but he's in the youth cycle. So his cycle of experience is different than my cycle of experience, but the awareness is the same. Now, if we understand what that practice is, awareness with the way things are, then if we feel happy or sad, we found a place in our hearts which can see the change in happiness and sadness and discover the unchanging peace which knows that. And this is the potential of awareness. So in meditation, let's say if you're meditating on the breath or something like that, and then you feel like you don't want to meditate, you get restless, or you want to go have a cup of tea or look at an email or something like that, and it's only 10 minutes into the meditation and you want to meditate for 45 minutes, the question is, well, what do you do with that? Well, I would suggest that quite often what we do is we don't notice it and we just leave, or the second one is we go off into fantasy. When meditation becomes uninteresting, our mind seeks an interesting object and we go off into planning or some kind of inspired project, or we might go into a negative thing. So the mind looks for something interesting to do. Or we just use willpower and we try to focus on the breath so that we stay on the cushion. Now, to me, that none of those would obviously work. But what would work is that if I actually knew I felt I wanted to leave, and I used that as my meditation object. So I'm aware with the feeling of not wanting to meditate. I'm not denying its existence or trying to get at some other kind of a feeling. I'm just aware with the feeling of not wanting to meditate. And if I do that, I find, if I do that, then the feeling of not wanting to meditate isn't permanent. Unless, of course, I've injured my knee or something extreme. But in a normal circumstance, it's just a perception that comes and goes, persists for whatever period of time. So if I'm practicing with the way things are and I determine to sit for the period of meditation, say of 45 minutes, then that's just another object in awareness. And that will take you to peace because you will no longer be reacting to the content of stream of consciousness, but you'll be knowing how the stream of consciousness is changing, and your reference will be awareness. And awareness is unchanging. It's stable. whereas the emotions and perceptions are unstable. Now, if you then choose an object of meditation, why do we choose an object of meditation? I would say it's simply to remind us of the present moment. Now, if you choose an object of meditation and then you try to focus on it really severely and make sure that you don't think or nothing comes up into the mind, most of us have probably tried that. It really doesn't work because it's about control, not about awareness. So when we choose an object of meditation, I would suggest what we're doing is simply noticing something in the present moment to remind us of the present moment, to remind us to be aware with the way things are. So that present moment experience could be the breath, it could just be sound, it could be just the feeling of your out breath, or it could even be a phrase that you put into the mind. May I be well, may I be free, may I be well, may I be free. So the object of meditation is not about so much focus as reminding of presence. You see what I mean? At least that's the way I find it most helpful. So if you're meditating, or when you're meditating, and then you find yourself thinking about tomorrow, something that might happen, and then suddenly you notice that you're thinking. Now, in that moment, uh, it's very, very important to be with the way things are rather than try to get rid of thought. And with the way things are is actually that thought has ended. There's a gap between that thinking process. There's a gap there of silence and stillness. And we don't tend to notice that because we usually are trying to control the mind in order not to have thought. So if in that moment of awakening, when thought is interrupted, say, by natural circumstances, then see if you can really make that a positive moment of, oh, great, I'm back. Bring in a sense of affirmation or positiveness rather than, oh man, I'm thinking too much. This meditation isn't working. Because that's more delusion, that's more thought. And then just be very patient. Be very, very patient. So choose the object of awareness, and now you're going to be with the object of awareness in the present moment. It's just basically to stay in the present moment. So if other things are happening, it doesn't matter. So if there are sounds of lawnmowers or children or dogs or whatever, that's not an interruption to the present moment. It's just a change in the present moment. And I think all of us have tried to concentrate our minds to such an extent that when there are external sounds, we are annoyed at them. Why are we annoyed? Because we're trying to concentrate on whatever we're doing. Now, I would suggest not using the word concentration, but using the word of collectedness or calming or presence with the way things are. And for that, you don't need to be concentrated on one object, but you need to be focused, say, in the present moment. So present moment awareness is kind of the first step in calming the mind, present moment awareness. So when you use the breath, say, you're just noticing like an in-breath feels like this, and that's part of the present moment. Or an out-breath feels like this, part of the present moment. Then you get kidnapped, and you find yourself thinking for 5 minutes, and then something interrupts it, then go back to that sense of, oh, the breath feels this way. So it's awareness with the breath rather than focusing and trying to get rid of thought. And yet taking responsibility for the thinking mind and noting that you're worried about something. And so you can use like labeling, worry, so that the thought patterns become objective rather than you being the subject of the worry, or fantasy, or resentment, or whatever it might be. It's just a kind of flow of stuff, and then you can be more and more objective with. So labeling is very important there. So let's do some meditation, and I'll set the clock for 45 minutes, and I'll just give a bit of introduction, and then I'll be quiet. We can sit quietly. So, where are you now? The room you're in has a certain temperature and there's certain sounds. And so just make note of that. I'm here now. And this is the experience of being here now. So you're aware with the way things are. Notice that there's no desire in this. You're not trying to create a kind of meditative experience, but rather just know. Begin with sound. And no sound. And right away, you probably notice the silence of the mind, the silence of knowing. So I can hear bird sound, a lot of robins and finches, and that's moving and changing. But the awareness of the knowing is silent and still. So if you get confused in your meditation, going back to just listening is a very easy way to kind of return to the present moment. It's a kind of good standard to remember. So this is what we're doing. We're doing awareness with the way things are, and we can localize our attention on sound, or we can localize our attention on the breath. So localize your attention on the out breath. Now don't tighten your eyes looking for something, but just quite spaciously know the in breath and know the out breath. So it's the same awareness now with the breathing. And obviously the sounds will still be there too. But you're just using the breath as a way of indicating the present moment. And then you try to do that for long stretches of time. The secret is patience, really. Returning to this attitude again and again and again. So I'll leave you to do that practice now.